The Colnago Y1Rs and Cervélo S5 might seem like obvious choices as our Race Bike of the Year finalists this year, but it's with good reason. Yes, these bikes were ridden to first and second on GC at the 2025 Tour de France, but more importantly, both represent some of the latest thinking on aero bike design today. You could even argue that these bikes have heralded the death of the lightweight climbing bike, such is the influence of aerodynamics in racing. The fact is, they've impressed us enough in testing to warrant their inclusion for the final shootout, alongside their success on the World Tour stage, putting many contenders like the Scott Addict RC, Van Rysel RCR Pro and Trek Madone SLR in the shade. But before we get started, thanks to Autotrail for sponsoring this year's Bike of the Year test. We'll tell you more about Autotrail's adventure-ready camper vans later in the video. Right then, this is how the finalists stack up. And stick around, because there can only be one winner. So, unveiled in December 2024, the Colnago Y1Rs is the bike on which Tadej Pogačar earned his 4th Tour de France title in 2025. But it had a slightly troubled start to life. For the first few months of the year, despite being used to win at the UAE Tour in February, more often than not, it was the V4RS, that's the all-rounder, that Pogačar opted to use right up until he won the Tour of Flanders. Many, me included, thought the Y1Rs then might be little more than a concept bike, a piece of statement design wheeled out for the PR opportunity. Well, how wrong I was. At launch, Colnago suggested that the Y1Rs was the fastest bike in the pro peloton, beating its nearest competitor at that time by 1 watt at 50 kilometers an hour. Despite that, it was the looks that drew most observers' attention. The offset seat tube design looks mad, frankly, but Colnago said it contributed to the bike's aerodynamics while improving compliance. It also pitches the rider forward a little, reminiscent of Poggy himself. Many described it as an ugly duckling, but in the past few months the old adage has begun to ring true. What's proven to be fast is never ugly. Now, you could easily argue that the Cervélo S5 right here was the bike that made the Y1Rs a reality. When Jonas Vingegaard won the 2022 and 2023 Tours de France, the S5 was the main weapon of choice. At the time, it was aerodynamics versus Pogačar's Colnago V4RS lightweight all-rounder, and aero had won twice. The writing was on the wall. Of course, success is never just down to the bike, but this latest S5 here sought to double down on the previous bike's strengths, given they'd served Vingegaard and co so well. The head tube and fork leg cords have gotten deeper, while Cervélo slimmed down the head tube, seat tube and seat post. A new reserve wheel set was also developed to work best with the new S5, contributing to a claimed 6.3 watt saving at 50 kilometers an hour. These refinements also brought about a claimed net frame set weight saving of 124 grams, albeit the fork gained 57 due to the deeper leg profiles. The majority of the savings elsewhere are seen at the cockpit, which has dropped the bolt-together design of the previous model. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, and with it we can see that Cervélo saw Colnago and Pogačar's continued competitiveness on the V4RS and sought to deal with the S5's relative weak point on the scales. At the same time, while Colnago was working on refining the V4RS into the V5RS, it had developed the Y1Rs to plug the aero bike-shaped hole in its arsenal. However, neither Cervélo nor Colnago are willing to positively identify each other when it comes to the relative performance of these two bikes. Cervélo won't confirm whether it tested the Y1Rs in full pro team drag against the S5, and given the Y1Rs launched first, Colnago couldn't have had the latest S5 for testing. Mind you, relying on claims isn't smart. Test protocols are almost always different, and those tests are often carried out in different wind tunnels, so there's usually a correlation discrepancy anyway. Bottom line, it's a fair assumption that they're competitive with the most aerodynamic bikes out there, and it's certain that neither would be raced if the teams weren't confident that they were the fastest available bikes to them. Looking at the designs, there are a few similarities here, especially towards the front. Both have bayonet-style forks, with this kind of free-floating head tube front section, which allows the total head tube structure to be longer without compromising the effective position of the steerer. In theory, this is great, because it preserves the kind of handling you'll expect on smartly designed all-rounders and climbing bikes, while increasing the level of air management in this key area. The distinctive handlebars are also similar. Both are designed to fit neatly with the frame sets, especially when they're slammed. They're one piece and have this two-pronged stem section. with a significant rise. Naturally, both are proprietary, meaning you can't swap to a standard layout, but Colnago and Cervélo allow you to swap them for free at point of purchase, which is key. It's worth saying the Colnago uses a particularly small 19mm upper bearing and a 1 1/8 inch lower bearing using ceramic speed solid lubrication technology. The Cervélo here is a little more standard at 1 1/8 and 1 3/8 inches. Towards the back, things are very different. As I mentioned before, the Y1Rs' most distinctive feature is clearly the offset seat tube, which is claimed to increase the effective length of the top tube for better air management, but also allow for a level of comfort through the saddle. Importantly, this also makes the effective seat tube angle steeper at 73.7 degrees in this size large bike, helping to open up the hip angle. The S5 though is notable for its curved seat tube, which hugs the rear wheel. Both designs limit how far the seat post can sit inside the frames though. I've had to have them both cut to size. Given seat post real estate is at a real premium here, a Shimano Di2 battery is stored in a port on the underside of the bottom bracket on the S5 here, while the Y1Rs has it tucked away in a port under the down tube bottle cage. It's important to note that the Cervélo's Reserve 57/64 wheel set, complete with widened spoke angling, has been designed hand in hand with the S5's asymmetrical layout. A clear sign that the entire riding system has been considered rather than just the frame set. Before we go any further, I'm going to take a minute to tell you about Autotrail and the Expedition 68, a purpose-built camper van for cyclists. This year's Bike of the Year couldn't have been possible without the support of Autotrail, the UK's leading motorhome and camper van manufacturer. Autotrail has more than 40 years of experience pushing boundaries, embracing cutting-edge technologies and designing solutions to enhance the van life experience. And the good news for you as a rider, Autotrail's Expedition 68 range is designed for road cyclists and gravel riders front of mind. The range includes 3 models, all with an integrated bike garage and pull-out bike trays. It's a no-compromise camper van for cyclists who want to head out onto the open road to explore new terrain with convenience and in comfort. With a 140 brake horsepower engine as standard, 200-watt solar panels, a 75 amp-hour leisure battery and a pop-top roof option, the Expedition 68 is designed to unleash your sense of adventure. Head to autotrail.co.uk for more information or click the link in the description. Thanks again to Autotrail for sponsoring this year's Bike of the Year test. Now, back to the video. So, specs then. For the Y1Rs, Colnago will only spec top-tier 2x road group sets. That's Campagnolo Super Record 13 and SRAM Red Axis on top of this Shimano Dual Race Di2 model, but offers a selection of wheel sets ranging from mid-level Vision SC45s as seen here, up to MV SES 4.5s. Cervélo also sells the S5 in a Jonas, Vingegaard and Wout van Aert mirroring Red Axis 1x configuration, and second-tier Ultegra Di2 and Force Access group sets, with DT Swiss 240 hubs laced to reserve wheels, instead of the top-spec 180s you can see here. All this means the entry point for an S5 is a little more accessible, even before the test bike specs are compared. You can have one from £9,200. Okay, that's still really not cheap, I get it, but we are talking about one of the most state-of-the-art race bikes here. As you see them here, each bike costs near as makes no difference £12,000, and fundamentally that buys you more on the Cervélo. The reserve wheel set here is notably wider at 25.4 and 24.4mm wide internally front to rear, and 34.3 and 32.5 wide externally. They're also quite obviously deeper, featuring different depths front to rear to balance aero efficiency and stability and weight. Despite this, it weighs a claimed 1,554 grams compared to the SC45 wheel set at 1,590. This is just 21mm wide internally and 31mm wide externally. The reserves also feature ceramic bearings compared to standard steel bearings you'll find on these Vision wheels. Now, Y1Rs customers could opt for NV's SES 4.5 wheels instead, which aren't a million miles away in terms of nominal spec and price compared to these reserves, but you'll need to pay extra for the privilege. Colnago also doesn't spec the Y1Rs with a power meter, which is quite the omission considering it's a race bike. You get a dual-sided 4i power meter with the S5, making it a more complete spec package. However, it's not all in Cervélo's favour here. While you can swap the cockpit size for one that will fit you best, you can't change the default seat post over there for the inline or setback version for free. On the Colnago, you can swap both through its dealer programme, plus make tweaks to the group set specification. There are limits here, but you can select your chainring size, crank length and cassette to get it right for you, which is certainly a nice to have. A case in point is the S5's 54 40-tooth chainrings. These are a great choice for racers on a flat day, but for most customers on any given day, it's probably a little bit big. And the scores on the scale doors? 7.53 for the Cervélo in this size 58 frame set, and 7.66 for this size large Y1Rs. So how do the rides compare? Well, firstly, they feel really fast, unsurprisingly, but it's how easily they handle that surprised me the most. Aero bikes still have this reputation for being harder to ride than all-rounders or lightweight bikes. Slab-sided tube profiles tend to make a bike feel more susceptible to crosswinds, while the aggressive layouts often mean they aren't as agile feeling. Neither of these bikes suffers from those drawbacks though. I must say they're among the most stable and easy to ride race bikes that I've tested, very close to all-rounders such as the NV Melee, which won our 2023 Performance Bike of the Year award, and lightweight bikes such as the Aero Orca. I'd argue the S5 feels slightly more sure-footed of the two in windier conditions, but I suspect that's down to the progressive rims rather than anything else. Overall though, it's easy to see why so-called death of lightweight bikes, in men's racing at least, is upon us. When it comes to technical descents, both feel predictable and confidence-inspiring. You get that business-like feeling at the front end, but thankfully neither is too aggressive or twitchy feeling. I mean, I've heard it said that the lack of traditional steerer tube takes away from the feeling of the front end, but hand on heart, I've not found that at all here. For me, the Y1Rs is just a touch more agile feeling between the two. The steering takes just a little less effort to respond, but as with most bikes I've tested, I found it's simply a matter of adapting to the characteristics of each bike in turn. But it's when you ride these bikes at speed, pedaling hard, that they make the most sense. The S5's huge bottom bracket area really offers a tangible sense of stiffness when you're giving it the beans. The Y1Rs is plenty stiff enough, mind, but it's arguably not quite as unyielding. You'll never get great compliance from these bikes, but neither feels distinctly harsh. The S5 does have the edge here again though. It's got 29mm Vittoria Corsa Pro tyres, and they dovetail well with the wide reserve rims, offering a touch extra volume compared to the 28mm Pirelli P0 tyres on the narrower Vision rims. You can really feel the difference on chip seal style roads. The sensation through the bars and the saddle just feels a little smoother on the S5. Obviously, running a wider NV wheel set with 29 or 30mm tyres on the Y1Rs, or simply swapping the tyres out, would mitigate this. But the point remains, you're not getting that for the same money here at point of purchase. It's also worth noting that the upper clearance limit is higher on the S5 at 34mm versus 32mm on the Y1Rs. Let's say you never intend to run tyres as wide as that. At least the S5 gives you a little more breathing room. So, when all is said and done, the Cervélo S5 is the deserving winner of the Race Bike of the Year category for 2025. On the spec sheet, the bottom line is you get more for your money. A power meter is an essential piece of equipment for any racer, a serious omission on the Y1Rs, while the top level wheel set and tyres help pull the S5 ahead too. This results in a slightly lighter, more polished ride experience versus the Y1Rs, although there's still plenty to like there. Of course, the Colnago is currently basking in the Pogačar glow, but it also offers a fuller program of customization. Yes, you have to pay to upgrade the wheels to reserve rivaling models, but you can choose your gearing and crank length, as well as between inline and setback seat posts for free, something brands should increasingly look to offer in 2025. There's no doubt in my mind that both bikes are playing right at the cutting edge of race bike design right now, and the sense of performance is tangible. The fact that both bikes can be ridden just as enjoyably on hilly rides as they can on the flat speaks to the level aero bikes are now reaching. However, with these frame sets delivering performance worthy of the best professional bike riders in the world, the devil is in the detail. The Cervélo is the better value, more rounded package, even if £12,000 is an eye-watering sum of money. So, the S5 is our 2025 Race Bike of the Year winner, but what do you think? Let us know in the comments section below this video. Don't forget to look out for all our other 2025 Bike of the Year content, and if you fancy sticking around, why not check out this video right here.